So I'll probably slap this audio into another video because I'm looking at somebody's their profile, and it's somebody I have a soft spot for. She's very kind. She's cool. Here and there we talk about some of the darker things in life. Some of it she doesn't get. I mean, some of it I probably don't get. Just the same. One of the reason I clicked record is there are a lot of people, and she's doing this, who use words and they do not appreciate the definition of the word. But many of these words have been hijacked by social engineering campaigns, courtesy of the Tavistock Institute. Prior to this post, she left something else on there, on the internet, which is misleading as fuck. And a couple posts before that, she said that social media is a lie, and it's highly ironic. So the reason I clicked record on this one, I'm going to read these to you. It says, peak overstimulation day. Too many bulky layers. Sock keeps rolling. It's bright and cold at the same time. My hair is touching my neck. Weird. And then she said and 3 times to emphasize this. My stomach hurts. And again, I feel bad that she's going through shit like this. We talked a bunch of health-related things, but there's a little thing that dances on this, and it says, actually autistic. To be autistic would mean that you would lack the ability to communicate with people, typically speaking. You'd have an impaired, function in terms of communication. That was a bad way to put it, and hopefully that was funny to you guys. I just woke up. Among other things, along those lines. But you wouldn't be able to communicate all of these things point for point, typically speaking, and it wouldn't be as eloquent. Some of these aren't necessarily, that articulate, but just the same. This isn't autism, is my point. And a lot of people will rattle that shit off. It's important for people to look into things instead of buying into them. A couple posts before this, she left something online, and it's propaganda. It's a social meme that's being circulated right now. And it states that trans people have always been around. And if you Google things like that, like, when did, trans become a thing? It will tell you it's always been here, blah, 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 which is a very convenient explanation. Cross-dressing has always existed. We used to have sissies and tomboys, and technically we still do. We do. We got gay guys and we got gay gals. But the lines are so absolutely muddy that anybody with a brain in their head would appreciate the fact that what a lot of these kids are shopping around paints the picture that the people who are shopping around what they've been trained to repeat lends itself to gay guys being embarrassed to be gay guys. It's almost as good as Obama and Michael not openly stating that Michael is a dude and cross-dressing. In other words, Michael is ashamed of being gay. They hid it. And so is Obama. And you could look into it, but most people won't. And most people would probably say, that's not true. That's impossible. And things along those lines. It's confusing to me just trying to rattle it off. Usually I have to draw it. I have to write it down is what I'm trying to say. When you got, I know another gal here in town that I saw yesterday, but she thinks she's a dude. She's taking steroids or testosterone, pardon me. So it's altered her voice. She just sounds like a goofy gal. She's kind of squeaky. I mean, kind of like a gay guy, but she's still a gal, and you can tell. I mean, archetypal features, everything else. I mean, even some of the pheromones, even though they've been fucking, corrupted. Just the same, she's a gal. But she claims that she's a dude, and that she was doing this. I think she changed it as well, because these things flip-flop, but she was saying that she was gay. But she's still a girl, she still has a vagina, and she still wants to sleep with guys, which means she's heterosexual. But she's taking testosterone for some reason. And it doesn't make a lick of fucking sense. She could dress, like a tomboy. She could, handle herself, conduct herself, as a tougher gal. But she didn't do that. The wildest part is because she started doing all this other wacky crap, she hasn't had any contact with her family whatsoever. And you can tell that eats her up, but she's still doing this shit. And it just boggles the mind. It just boggles the fucking mind. But if anything is well financed and well circulated, people will buy into it. And we see that today. That garbage doesn't reflect reality in any form or way. There's always been cross-dressers, but the social engineering jargon is in place to condition people to assume, and essentially call themselves, inanimate objects, to refer to, somebody in singular, in plural, they, them. It makes no sense at all. When there's one person in the room, you're referring to one fucking person. You would never say they or them in that regard. That's a tricky one too, but just the same. I know if people just think about these things, it would make sense, but most people don't think about them at all. And this is also my shitty fucking delivery, and I've been complaining about this for a very, very long time. Also look up the Tavistock Institute and all the other stuff, and people who have bought into this, they're just going to tune out. They're going to reject what I'm saying, and they obviously didn't look into those things to begin with. So they're still probably never going to. And that's why this agenda has, traction on the fucking DARPA internet. It's insane. It's fucking insane. It's hurting us more than it's helping us, and people don't realize that. I also plan to slap this into another video, because there is a guy on Instagram, or no, it was on TikTok today. It's the first thing I saw, and he's making some sense, but then he throws all that sense out the window and starts reaffirming what I'm complaining about right now, because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't realize, because he didn't look into it. If you look up the Tavistock Institute, anything that comes out of the Tavistock Institute, you would question, because it is not in place to benefit you and I. And the subject matter that I'm complaining about came from the Tavistock Institute. The subject matter that I'm referring to also has to do with eugenics. If you buff up on eugenics, it doesn't just have to do with Nazi Germany. Isaac Newton and much of his family promoted it, which is why you've also been trained to repeat and believe in, and I almost said repeat again, evolution and nonsense that doesn't reflect reality in any form or way. I'm also not a Bible thumping this, that, and the other thing. All religion is social control, but evolution is dog shit. And when you hear people talking about things evolving and things along those lines, they're reaffirming a narrative that doesn't reflect reality. They're lying to you, and they're lying to themselves, and most people believe it. My crummy definition wasn't too far from the mark. Impaired communication and social interaction. The end.
America is about to get really gross, because I can already see that Trump is emboldening people to fulfill their hateful dreams. Being an average, normal looking white guy, it puts me in a room with a lot of white people that feel safe around me. And when they feel safe, they say the craziest shit. So I have a good idea of the type of vitriol that they hold towards groups of people that are not like them. Trump does a great job of normalizing racism. Anything that Trump can label as woke culture is going to be targeted. In his speech today, he targeted DEI, which is just a dog whistle for black people, and then he targeted trans people. When the president of the United States is normalizing these things, other people are going to feel like it's normal to do these things in public. So we are going to see a lot of freaks out there that are going to feel comfortable saying insane things in public. I will not be surprised if people are aggressive towards minorities because Trump is making that okay. He has members of his cabinet talking about, if you see immigrants, call us, let us know, be snitches. Part of the issue is the people he's emboldening is white people, and they have the ability to kind of be violent with no repercussions. And they are so good at playing the victim card, so if somebody decides to clap back at them, they're just gonna say that they were targeted. And when the entire police, military, government is all right-wing freaks, there's really no answer. And I would guess the comments on this video will give me a good example of the freaks that I'm talking about, because we are not even on day one. It only gets worse from this point on.
Sounds like this guy has a good heart. but he's not doing much with the brain in his head. He's labeling people freaks, which is also just as fucking ridiculous as the message that he's promoting. He just rattled off something having to do with the right wing, which means he's promoting Hegelian dialectic. He's promoting conquer and divide. He's promoting a division between people by talking about the right wing. That's why I state that he's not very bright. It would be beautiful if I could leave this message on TikTok or YouTube and, lots of people would see it and actually think about it. But most of them are, in fact, just as dumb as this kid. As a reminder, he also promoted, social engineering jargon. It's cross-dressing. Cross-dressing isn't a race of people, and it's not a gender, and it never will be. That's not how shit works. It's a third party. And that's the easy way to just think about, it's a third fucking party option, which has never benefited you and I. It's opening up a door to bullshit. And usually what I'll use as an analogy is we started calling healthy, life-sustaining food full of light organic, and bam, we opened up the door to genetically modified poison. And if you were thinking about things, you would already be cooking with other things, you'd be cooking with fire. You could reason shit out. And people don't do that. Instead, they're going to jump on the fucking idiot, wagon of awareness, and they're going to repeat what this kid said. They're going to repost what this kid said. They're not going to speak against what this kid said. And or it's going to be the extreme opposite of what this kid just said. They're not going to find a middle ground. They're not going to do any of that stuff, just like you don't see with presidents, and I've complained about that numerous times. You don't have a mediator. You don't have anybody making any fucking sense, typically speaking. I'm trying to do my best, even though I understand some of these things are going to offend you guys, but if you do look into them, they lead somewhere, and I mean well. You can connect the dots, but most of you are going to choose not to. I want you to think about the narratives that people are spoon-fed. Keep in mind, I've got pretty pale skin. I've got some Sioux blood in me. That's probably like the darkest markers, so to speak, that I could speak to, but just the same. And most people, you're not going to give a fuck about that anyway if you meet me. Most people are going to judge people by a book by its cover. Just the same. If you look at what you'll find online and what you'll find in books, typically speaking, white folks, they don't make up much of what's on this rock. 9 to 10%, roughly, is what that says. This one says 8%, and these are superficial Google searches, but it's minimal is my point. So what I want you to question is, why have you been told that all these other, ethnic groups, these racial groups are minorities? It does beg some questions, to say the very least. It is also interesting and terribly curious. So if we have smart people on this rock, right? How did, most people say the white people, the 1% or blah, 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 you know what I mean, come into positions of power, so to speak. How did any of that happen? And there's also something else we're leaving out, of course, but it doesn't usually come up, and it does have to do with Ashkenazi, among other things, because it is connected to this. It is. And there are also other families connected to this that are relevant, like the black nobility who live in Spain, who aren't white. There are a lot of other factors in terms of who are pulling our strings, and they're not exclusively white, just so you know. And you would know this if you researched. I just gave you 2 examples. Not great ones, but I did throw you breadcrumbs. Just the same. Why do you hear that, all the other racial groups are minorities when they technically make up the majority of the fucking people on this rock? Collectively speaking, of course. I want you to think back to when people were coming in through Ellis Island in New York, and New York was becoming a melting pot, and how there were segregated areas still. And some of that, in some ways, is beautiful, especially many, many decades or, centuries later in terms of not necessarily food carts, but you get these different pockets of culture, which is really neat. You still have some of that here in Portland, Oregon. Plus, Portland, Oregon also, it is, I mean, anywhere you go, there's racism, unfortunately. Again, people judge books by, they judge a book by its cover. That's what I'm trying to spit out. So old Portland was more on the nose and fucking shitty in that regard. I read, it's one of Chuck Palahniuk's books. It's Postcards and something or other. Now I can't think of what the full title is. But this is back when I didn't realize that Chuck was gay. And one of the stories is when he was younger and he got beat up downtown in Chinatown, I think it's Chinatown, for being gay. And I was like, okay. So then I started reading up on Portland history. And I was like, oh, yeah, some of this was pretty fucked in a whole nother way. And I frown on that. So if you guys listen to the rest of the message and you actually thought about some of this stuff, I'm coming full circle with all these things, poorly speaking, and I've said it many times before. I don't frown on being gay. Typically, that is a minority, because if it wasn't, it would possibly lend itself to depopulation, because most people would, in fact, be gay and not necessarily breeding, and among other things, it would interrupt the cycle of life. But back to point, you can cross-dress all you want. You can cosplay if you're a dude or a gal as the other sex, but you aren't. And you shouldn't ask people or assume or insist, or outright demand that other people lie to you because you're lying to yourself, because that's insane. And that thought process certainly shouldn't pour over in terms of training children to lie about what reflects reality. That's another issue at hand. But some of you out there, you might be gay. And that does happen, but not on such a wide scale. And that's only because it's well-financed and well-circulated. In terms of, history, I don't think we've ever seen this happen before on such a wide scale, where so many dudes were wearing dresses and this, that, and the other thing. And if you look at the internet, it's also connected to pornography. That's another issue. If you look into that, where did some of that come from? Well, Tavistock Institute again. MK Ultra sub-projects. And the list goes on. Are any of those in place to benefit you and I? And if you look into it, no, they are not. Just because you're lazy and or terribly slow doesn't mean bibbidi-bobbidi propaganda. It doesn't mean that despite the fact you're cosplaying as the opposite sex, overnight you're going to grow the genitalia you've been trained, you've been conditioned to daydream about and wish you had. That's not how shit works. In the last couple days, TikTok was allegedly shut down and, reinstated the day after. Part of the reason I'm saying what I'm saying right now is to remind you that a lot of people out there are squawking about authority in relation to that and how you can't trust it. Where do you think the official narrative of trans came from? More importantly, have you ever seen it in the programming? Has a large company like Disney promoted it? These are red flags. You and I are being manipulated. And if it was just some humble, grassroots, this, that, and the other thing, something fucking wholesome that actually reflected reality, well, nudge, nudge, something, motherfucker. Use your goddamn brain. Who knows when this took place? It was roughly after the Enduring Agenda was imposed on people. And there's a place I used to work for who has their locations vary, mind you. So one of them still has a bar, a beer bar for the most part. And the guy in question is the guy who passively rang me up because it was mostly automated bullshit. The point to this message is he and I understand each other to limiting degrees. He and I were having an exchange of the confrontation of the soul. And it had to do with Martin Luther King, and it had to do with the Trump inauguration, both of which are superficial as fuck. The only reason Martin Luther King ever had any traction is because he did sell out. And most people don't want to hear that. It's the only reason that would be well financed and well circulated. As for Trump, I mean, the conversation that ensued is I openly stated Trump's daddy is part of the KKK, or was. America became a corporation in 1871. What else? I'm trying to think of what else I rattled off. I didn't rattle off 1913, having to do with the fact that all citizens became debt slaves. But just the same, I was rattling off facts, and the guy in question is very sweet. He looks like he has dark skin. He's got more melanin in his skin than I do, which is why initially when he and I used to interact, he used to look at me like I was a piece of shit. But I'm pretty sure tonight when I rattled off what I rattled off, flipped his lid. Which is nice, but it doesn't mean a fucking thing. Doesn't build me up. Doesn't build him up. Doesn't do either of us any justice. Doesn't do either of us any good. Because by and large, he and I, you and I really, are surrounded by absolute fucking morons who don't understand a goddamn thing. They are susceptible to the Hegelian dialectic. The conversation began with, he mentioned Elon Musk. And so, out of the gates, I barked because I had 3 beers in me. Elon Musk is controlled opposition, as is Donald Trump. And anybody with a brain in their head could figure this shit out, but they don't. Most people fucking have been praising fucking Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Why do you think Donald Trump has been in the fucking propaganda? You know, the programming, the propaganda, the programming, they're synonymous long term. I made myself watch Home Alone last night, or the night before, maybe one night prior. Doesn't matter, just the same. And it's a brief moment, but it's subliminal messages. It's subliminal imagery at its best. It's normalizing Donald Trump. And he's been in how many fucking things? Look up his IDMB or whatever the fuck that's called. I mean, he's an actor. He's a low-level steward of the fucking corporation. He's a face man of the goddamn District of Columbia. And to drive this point home, and yeah, I'm doing this because this is what people fucking respond to. By the way, this has to do with peace. Not this. This. Which is synonymous with this. Not this. This is what most people are shopping around. And I've never spelled it out in terms of visual imagery. Because I've had people argue with me. This is peace, man. I'll believe whatever fucking is shopped around. I'm a dumb fucking cunt. Meanwhile, this is peace, which is why you see it as above, so below. Not this. This is victory. This is the cross of Nero. This is the end of man. You could think of it this way, if I could do it. This is water. This is fire. Or is it? Most of you would probably repeat what I just said, right? Probably. This is fire. This is water. The scary thing is if I didn't spell it out, you can't Google this shit. You could look up elemental sigils, you could look up elemental symbols, but for the most part, it's been so widely corrupted. It's been corrupted. Most people will repeat absolute fucking nonsense. It's the same reason people repeat, shit having to do with planets. Planets don't exist. They're never going to exist. They don't exist. Space is a bad pun. I heard it in a movie the other night. Can't remember which one. I've seen so many goddamn movies, and I've tracked so many moments of lesser magic where our masters are telling us one thing and showing you something else. And people are blissfully unaware of the fact that they're being spoon-fed information. And you don't hear it come up because people are dumb. They've been conditioned to be absolutely fucking bags of meat. I mean, that's one way to put it. Either way, I didn't record videos, which means I didn't spoon feed it to the internet, which means most people don't know about it. And the videos I'm recording to, or the videos that I'm referring to, pardon me, again, I've been drinking, have to do with early 1990s. And I've never seen any video online referencing these, by the way. Because you and I are not surrounded by well-meaning people who are capable of critical thinking skills, who can think for themselves. I've had 3 beers in me. I'm probably, well, technically no, I am. I'm partaking on the 4th fucking beer. And I'm still articulating myself. I'm still fucking dishing up things that are rooted in logic. Reasoning. There are reasoning skills involved in what I'm fucking telling you. I'm also disseminating lesser magic. I'm pointing out shit that is less than obvious to the fucking superficial duds. Which is why I'm talking in a bad fucking accent. To try to differentiate what's what. And it's interesting that there's a little bit of fuzz up here. A little bit of bokeh. You know, B-O-K-E-H, I believe. A little bit of because you and I are surrounded by fucking morons. And that's why things are bad. That's why things are getting worse and worse and worse, exponentially speaking. Who knows why, but then again, it's also relevant. I just thought of Disney's Daredevil. And I just thought about when Daredevil, you know, the Marvel version of it, was initially shit out. And it wasn't so bad. It wasn't full of divisive fucking garbage. And if I'm not mistaken, the reboot will be. Because it's Disney. Granted, things are changing for a reason. But not for a good reason. A lot of people would probably assume otherwise based on what I've said online throughout the years. You and I are being manipulated. You and I, it's a tug of war. You got Biden, you got Trump. You got Biden, you got Trump. And that's how that shit works. Pay attention. Track the patterns. Think about the stewards of the fucking corporation of the District of Columbia. One plays good cop, one plays bad cop. One plays good cop, one plays bad cop. The conversation I had with the fella at this grocery store involved this, and I don't think he understands it. Because he does have darker skin. He's got a dog in the fucking race. He's not a bad guy. And he's not terribly fucking stupid. He's not. He's on the cusp of it. He's on the precipice of grasping what would be really neat if I could just sit down and have a fucking shot of whiskey with him and have a little talk. And say, hey, consider this information. And on that note, in terms of all of the things that I could fucking teach you guys, I could quite literally spell out and show you the stepping stones to build these things up. I need to know that you can think for yourself. I need to know that you're not going to fuck this up. I need to know that I can place faith and trust and fill in the fucking blank in you. In you, you stupid, and I'm going to say it again, stupid fuck. And most of you would fuck this up. Most of you would fucking dash out the door and say, Toth the Atlantean! This is associated with Toth the Atlantean and Tartaria! Because you're a stupid fuck. You're a gullible fucking retard, willing to repeat anything. You're not worth your salt. You're not willing to strive to be the best and the brightest. You're not willing to elevate yourself or raise your vibration. And technically, this is the best part. By definition, you're not a retard, but you're acting like a retard because you're lowering yourself. Because you bought into propaganda. Because you're dumb, stupid. I mean, I'm saying dumb and stupid. It means the same thing. You're a moron. There's an index, by the way, which is to say a spectrum. And you're part of it. And everybody who's seen this video falls into that index. I'm looking for people who don't fall into the index anymore. I'm looking for people who are willing to step aside from that, to consider what I said, and to use it as a fucking tool. To better themselves. To do right. It's a very Dudley do right kind of a situation. But most of you are dumber than a fucking box of hats. You don't want to hear it, but you need to hear it. You need to hear it, you need to accept it, you need to consider it, and you need to move past it. And most of you are too fucking egocentric or narcissistic to ever get past that point. You'll either waste my time by sending me a shit ton of fucking messages, and or you'll whine at me in the comment section about a bunch of fucking dog shit that doesn't reflect reality to build up your ego. Because you're looking for likes. You want me to fucking say, "Good job, dumb fuck! You're a retard! Good job!" Or you could do the right thing. You could think about the information. You could use it as a tool. And we could move forward. I'm looking for people who are capable of abstract thought, who are adults, who are capable of critical thinking skills. Which is to say, they can fucking use this shit to benefit you and I. In stark contrast to what most people are up to. But most people are going to defend celebrity puppets, and the list goes on. It's one of many examples of a dumb motherfucker. That was a dramatic pause for emphasis. It wouldn't be this way, but it is this way because it's by design, not coincidence, that you and I are surrounded by stupid fucking cunts who don't have a goddamn clue what's going on, which is why I'm censored on the goddamn DARPA internets. Most people don't see these videos because I'm making fucking sense. In stark contrast to what you're going to be spoon-fed, what you're going to see at the top of your fucking feed. Imagine that. Do you think this is by design or coincidence? Sincerely, it doesn't take that much fucking mental know-how to reason this out. And yet, most people are, they buy into what's at the top of the fucking feed, where they're spoon-fed shit. This is what's reality. I believe in it. I'm gonna run with it. I'm gonna talk to you about it. Reality. And that's why you and I were given numerous forms of communication on free social engineering apps on the goddamn DARPA internet, all of which, if you track it back, has to do with free AOL discs, free fucking cell phones, but more importantly, the Davos panel. The Davos panel openly stated that you and I would be giving numerous forms of communication, and I've never had anybody dance this back, drudge up the fucking information available to them, and cite this. I've never had one fucking person do this. And most likely you can't do this with Google, which means you'd really have to fucking put in time and energy to prove this point. Not one fucking bargain bin fucking retard on the goddamn DARPA internet has been able to do this. And or taken the time to do this. Because you and I are surrounded by fucking morons who are fucking everything up for you and I. Exponentially speaking. But what the fuck do I know? Do you want a pelvic thrust? Fuck you. If you're not a bargain bin retard, this is what it's like using fucking TikTok. System notification! In other words, they're censoring what I left online. I said, damn, you're slow. Meanwhile, my numerous YouTube accounts exist. That shouldn't be fucking challenged. That should be fine and dandy to leave online, because that fucking reflects reality in stark contrast to the fucking superficial dog shit that's being circulated. And I have to appeal it. I have to jump through a human hoop, a stupid human hoop, because fascist fucking tactics exist on TikTok. And this predates what most fucking superficial goddamn retards are shopping around today. This isn't new. This is old hat. You would experience this too if you weren't a superficial fucking cunt. By the way, if you looked into Black Lives Matter, you would realize that it was funded by the Rockefeller Trust, which means it was divisive fucking bullshit in order to polarize people. Blue versus red, conquer and divide, Hegelian dialectic, Doppler shift, and the list goes on. But how many people fucking repeated that garbage? How many people fucking bought propaganda and put it in their goddamn yard? How many people went out and screamed at the goddamn sky because that's what the internet trained them to do? I mean, the television, the news, the internet, the DARPA internet. You and I are not surrounded by smart people. That's the bottom line. But heaven forbid you take the time and try to reason out what I'm getting at. And you're probably not going to find it in a superficial Google search, you superficial fucks. I don't dish up my phone number. I don't dish up my address. Most people who have known me long term don't know where I live, because I cut myself off from most people. Point being, you probably assume the worst of me, and yet I'm the best among us, despite what you might assume. And you probably do. It might sound a little bold, but it's rooted in logic, and it would benefit you and I as a whole, because I took time and energy to try to reason this shit out before opening my mouth. How many of you have done that? How many of you have truly sat with the fucking information instead of dashing out the door and fucking repeating the goddamn propaganda? This was a dramatic pause because most of you are dumber than a fucking fiddle. Broken fiddle in a fucking case. It's one way to put it. It's a bad way to put it. It's one way to put it. And most of you will probably assume otherwise, despite the fact that you are the fucking problem. And you're a dumb cunt. And you don't realize it. By the way, I still use Windows 97, and half the time when I log in, I have to unplug the power cable just to get it to power up quickly. What are some of the other examples? There are so many. It's fucking ridiculous. If I were to transfer files, keep in mind, I use a separate laptop that is not connected to the internet to knock out what I write about. And this is something I figured out early on because you and I are being manipulated. And most of the things that you and I dish up in terms of an electronic format, if it is ever connected, and I do mean ever connected to Wi-Fi, will upload and fucking report on to a fucking black server. This is why I use a separate fucking laptop. And it might sound paranoid to a lot of you out there, but if you're paying attention, everything is fucking tracked now. Point being, the old days, and I have not updated either of these laptops. They are identical, by the way. I I have not updated either of them, and yet, Windows Explorer, as it's called, because I would never use Apple, because Apple is the worst of the bunch, and it's even worse than what I'm talking about. And you have to be a pseudo-intellectual fucking retard to buy into that, and most people are. And that's also very telling of just how stupid people are. Do you own Apple products or Android? It's one way you could reason out whether or not you should date somebody. And it's still not a good sign, but it will help differentiate the two. Back to point, if I can rattle this off, because I have been drinking and I am very frustrated. I'm tired of fucking shit. I'm starting to lose my fucking train of thought. It's partially because this did boot up, and I have something else in mind that I plan to knock out. What was I going to tell you guys? Now I don't remember. I had it for a minute. Now I lost it. I'm a Pisces, so I'm full of fucking wishful thinking and idealistic, this, that, and the other thing. And I miss the idea of being, the thought of being surrounded by adults who are coming from a moral compass and willing to do the right thing. And what you and I are experiencing in terms of reality is quite the opposite. And most people aren't thinking with a fucking moral compass, which is why most people are repeating the fucking absolute dog shit. It flies in the face of basic logic, and by logic I'm talking about a moral compass. It might make you come. It might produce some endorphins, but it is not necessarily the right fucking thing. It is not something that is in place to benefit you and I. And most people haven't figured that much out because most people are bargain bin fucking characters. They're Muppets. They're a means to an end. It should terrify you. By the way, I'm drunk. And I'm still making more sense than most of the stupid fucking cunts that you and I are surrounded by. Check out my monkey socks, you dumb fucking cunts! No, really. I could probably walk circles around you. I'm not great at skating, but I could probably outskate you. And the list goes on, because you and I are surrounded by fucking bargain bin Muppets. And that's on a good day. But what the fuck do I know?
Merciful to the stranger. For we were all one strangers.
Here's a great way to sum up doing the right thing versus falling into lockstep and doing what most people are going to fucking, buy into because they didn't look into it. You can read the words on the screen, take a fucking screenshot. This gal peddles her ass online. She supposedly knocks out music here and there as well. She's also shopping around Amen, which means she doesn't understand what Amen represents. But then again, most people talk about Jesus with a J and Jesus in general because they don't understand what it is. They don't understand how reality works because they've never taken the time to try to appreciate these things. These are some of the most superficial things under the sun that I could teach you. And that in some cases, I have left online for free. Because I am trying to help you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, and or if you're not privy to the public, free information that I've left online for over 10 years, and this factors into, here's the account, I'll click on it. I have 60,000 posts. Used to have many more followers than that, which I forgot about, to be honest, because I kicked quite a few to a curb, because I took the time to fucking screen them. Just the same, I can help you, and most people aren't helping themselves, which means they are fucking they're part of the problem. And they're too dumb to realize it. They're not going to pull their heads out of their ass, they're not going to do the right fucking thing. They're fucking you and I up, and the list goes on. And on. And on. It's not unlike that, what's that lamb chop song. Pardon me, I've been drinking, because, yeah, I'm justifying it in a number of ways. I'm surrounded by bargain bin fucking retarded Muppets, and I'm very, very fucking sick and tired of it. I am sitting on answers, and I was planning on cataloging some things, but I didn't allow myself to even power up the other laptop tonight. Wrote it down and told myself I would do it tomorrow after skating around a little drunk, hanging out with some bums who are better company than the fucking yuppies here in Portland, and the list goes on. But what the fuck do I know? Deep down, I'm just a good guy who fucking means well, but I'm surrounded by fucking superficial fucking slime. And most of you fall into that fucking category, and most of you aren't willing to accept the fact, let alone acknowledge the fact that that is the fucking fact. That's what reflects reality. You are the fucking problem, and you don't realize it. Tell me more about your 1%. Tell me more about your 1% and how much, logic is rooted in that. Think about it. If you and I are you and I outnumber the 1%, why would the 1% be a problem to begin with? Oh, maybe it's because you're a fucking stupid cunt, and most people you and I bump into are stupid cunts. Which would facilitate, which is to say, lend themselves to working for our masters. In other words, the 1%. Agents of the Matrix, if you will. Having to do with that 1999 film, The Matrix. Because what I'm talking about reflects reality. It makes perfect fucking sense. And this is just one example. But most of you aren't receptive because you're a dumb. And I mean, by dumb, I'm talking about a stupid fucking cunt. Who isn't worth their salt. And you need to be insulted in order to pull your head out of your ass and to begin this journey. And most of you aren't going to do that. Games. We're all playing games. I had a beautiful moment with the homeless dude that I was talking to earlier tonight. And he said, hey, I always thought you were drinking coffee. Because he and I pay attention. And you can see when I offered him a stout, he had a moment. You could call it a revelation. And it was a rather sweet moment. And I'm happy that he and I had that moment. As you could probably surmise. But as always, what the fuck do I know? I do mean well. I'm trying to help you guys. This gal is the epitome of superficial people on the internet. Keep in mind, I'm following this garbage, though. This is what I saw on there today.
Millions have put their trust in you.
And I left a comment on here. You can read it. You can take a screenshot. She wrote me back and said, "This nonsense? ? It's a video of a speech from a bishop live." I'm pretty sure I fucking spelled it out, and you would have to take a screenshot and read it, or read it, to appreciate what I'm getting at. And most of you probably wouldn't, or won't. If you listen closely,
Told the nation yesterday you have felt
the bishop sounds like a girl, because the bishop is a girl. Which speaks to yet another social engineering agenda, if you think about it. Which is ironic, but then again, Trump is married to a cross-dressing fucking this, that, and the other thing. But what do I know? I mean, is it out of place? No, Obama is too. And the list goes on. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the Bushes was as well. And some people will claim that that's Aleister Crowley, which is even funnier, but what do I know?
millions have put their trust in you.
Trust. In a
And as you told
steward,
the nation
a
yesterday,
puppet.
You have felt the
Play.
in God. In the name of our God,
Their
I
God.
ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country.
You mean the
who are scared
corporation?
now.
Because America became a corporation in 1871. Countries don't exist anymore. Specifically, America. In other words, that's propaganda. That's nonsense.
To have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and
Because you're a little girl pretending to be a boy?
independent families. Some who fear for their lives.
Damn, that sounds like a man.
The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals.
Are we reciting Chuck Palahniuk's fucking Fight Club book?
They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation.
By the way, when you're talking about citizens, 1913 marks when anyone who identified as a citizen became a fucking debt slave. I got vegan pizza in my mouth. But the year in question marks when all currency became debt-based. And most of you probably don't know this, because most of you are superficial fucking cunts.
But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our church.
Well, it depends. That's a tricky, and it's a very slippery slope.
And mosques.
Do you become part of the corporation? Do you sign the paperwork and consent? Because if so, then you become a citizen, you're a debt slave, which means you're subject to all of the debt slave bullshit. In other words, most people support paying unconstitutional taxes, which means if you don't, and you stand out, you will be weeded out, and you will suffer sanctions. Digital, financial, and the list goes on. This is relevant to what's being shopped around in this garbage.
Synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children.
By president, this gal is referring to the fact that Trump is a steward of the District of Columbia. You probably won't find this if you Google search it. You know, you use Google, because Google's a tool of propaganda. But Trump is a steward of the bottom of the trilateral city-states. America is the bottom of the District of Columbia. And the District of Columbia is the bottom of the trilateral city-states, which is why I said what I just said. I'll show you something else in a minute if I remember to.
Children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here.
Why doesn't that girl dress like a girl? Why doesn't that girl look like a girl? Why does that girl kind of look like a guy? Why is that girl playing cosplay or make-believe?
Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger.
Our masters are laughing at us, and if you listen to half the shit that's been coming out of Trump's mouth, because he's a puppet of the corporation, that's why we have this deacon, or whoever you want to fucking consider this person as, this gal as, quite literally paralleled with Trump today. If you look at it closely, Trump is sandwiched between two people who are cross-dressing. And most people aren't going to pick up what I'm pointing out.
For we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being.
You're looking at three dudes, by the way.
To speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people.
Not just God, our God. The wording is carefully chosen because it's bullshit. You and I are being manipulated, and most people are too dumb to recognize this fact.
Good of all people in this nation and the world.
Same gal just posted this garbage, and it's the same garbage I saw on that other gal's fucking social engineering platform earlier today. Because people are circulating the propaganda. They're not fucking thinking for themselves. They're riding each other's coattails because they're dumber than a fucking basket of yarn. So I left this on here. I'm going to read it to you, and most people won't fucking see it. I sure as shit can't leave this on TikTok, even though it's so innovative. It's so, this, that, and the other thing. TikTok is the worst of the social engineering platforms, which means I can't leave this on there. And I haven't been able to. Ever. Back to point. And that should really fucking shake you up. But most of you probably aren't thinking for yourselves, so you don't understand what I just said or why that's important. Say cross-dressing isn't a gender. Cross-dressing isn't a race of people. Strengths and weaknesses apply to men and women. And all of this is shit that you should fucking already know. We balance one another out. I'm referring to cold and hot, night and day, magnetism, electricity, and it should say, and the list goes on. Best of all, you and I wouldn't exist if a man and a woman didn't create us. My throat's very dry. I've been drinking all night, and I'm fucking sick and tired of being surrounded by fucking retards. And yet, I'm still doing this because I mean well, unlike most of the fucking people who are misleading you. And that's going to go over most of your heads. Because most of you aren't coming from a heart space. Most of you are not raising your vibration, so to speak. Most of you are not centered in any form or way, which means you're not going to recognize what reflects reality. You're going to be pulled in one direction or the other because you're a dumb fucking cunt. And there's no nice way to put that, because you're a dumb cunt. One way you could think of this is there is no reason to have a third party. Have third parties intruded on our lives in recent days? Here's another way you could appreciate this. When people started calling food that used to contain light and life organic, it opened up the door to genetically modified poison. Why do you think cross-dressing was rebranded and weaponized is something that it's not. That's a bad way to put it, but maybe you guys can reason that out. What you need to appreciate is there's nothing wrong with being gay, and there's nothing wrong with sissies and tomboys. Those two aspects of reality have always existed. I don't always stress this, even though you guys could reason this much out, but most people are just as superficial as it fucking comes. And a lot of times I intentionally leave that out and watch people make fucking blanket assumptions about me and my character. Because you and I are surrounded with fucking morons. Case in point, this is probably this gal chiming in again, 10-1, but maybe I'm wrong. Hey, look. No, it's about an HBO HBO post. I just shit littered this. Here, let's do this. Do you see what I see? It might say yuppies more than once, because there's a word known as disparity. It also factors into what's well-financed and well-circulated. And in the old days, you had to pay for it more so. These days, now it's social media. Now it's accessible. But in the old days, there was a class system, and they were privy to something that other people were not. And HBO was part of that. Which is why I left what I left on here. And somebody ironically left me something that said, shut up, if I'm not mistaken. And they left a social engineering sticker on there. Because social engineering stickers are written into the algorithm, the dumb fucking monkeys, or clowns, or muppets, if you will. Down. Stupid fucking people. It's ironic, based on what I just experienced, from somebody who is subpar. And happens to be a yuppie, who has a dog in this race. And if you look closely, I responded to a lot of fucking yuppies. I remember going on road trips, and sometimes we would stay in a hotel and they had HBO, and that was the only time I ever fucking saw something like that, and I had no idea that even existed. And I was better off because of it. What I'm alluding to factors into social media. It also factors into what I'm complaining about. And why this is so readily accessible. Why this is being shopped around. And I did just refresh it on. That was my mistake. Just the same, you might be picking up what I'm putting down. You and I were better off before all of this, and the only reason you and I have access to this is to mislead and manipulate the masses. But most people are too dumb to figure that much out.